talked about Generation Erasmus and what their behaviors are when it comes to student mobility, what can be the factors that would stop them from going on a mobility, and what kind of things we can do on the housing provider side or students or institutional side to facilitate the experience and get more students to consider going on international mobility. Well, housing is extremely important because it's first the main spending, usually, at least after tuition fees in some countries, which means that if you cannot afford to find a house, you just simply won't go or you will leave. And sometimes that's what happens actually. You get students that start their mobility, fail to find an accommodation they can afford, and go back. So in the sense of how much it can cost, it's extremely important. And then of course there's the whole experience and success with your studies and social life and not having a roof, a proper place to live can have very big consequences on everything else besides your wallet. It's very exciting at the moment because there's an increasing interest at least from investors and increasingly the private sector is jumping in to come in where the public sector sometimes might be lacking the funds or the time to prioritize building new housing or supporting students better. So lots of exciting things are happening. There's still a long way to go, mostly because there are ambitious targets and generally globalization is making doing international studies a must-have for students. So the demand keeps growing and growing and building housing takes time, always. So it's still very much a catch-up game. But overall, at least in Europe, especially in the context of the Erasmus program and all the support the European Commission does, we're doing very, very good, at least for the privileged kids, which is maybe another problem because very much it's for the privileged middle and higher class students that this happens at the moment. I don't usually have an opportunity to meet so many private investors or housing providers in the students' network and in the higher education field. It's very easy to meet university representatives, other student organizations, but to be given a chance to have such a focus on housing and with such an audience that you don't necessarily see in the regular spheres, if I might call them that, it's very interesting in terms of the alternative perspective and the bigger picture it gives. It allows to take a step back and see things a bit differently, and that's very positive always. What's inspirational is to see the efforts that are being done into making the accommodation not just very cost effective, but also a great place to live with a real emphasis on shared living spaces, creating, sometimes I've seen gardens or big plans with star architects creating residences, and that's places I want to live, even not being a student. So it's very, very inspiring to see such an effort put into what could be seen as the bonus, the thing that you do if you're not so into cost effectiveness and making a profit. And that's actually a fear that you could have when you always hear that private investors are looking at the sector. It's going to be like, oh my God, they're going to go with real high prices and real low quality accommodation. And actually what I've been seeing today is that for the most part it is really not the case, and that's really great. We're in a very important topic, very important moment in the European Union higher education agenda, because with the review of the Erasmus Plus program comes the opportunity to look how to improve things, how to improve the subsidies the Commission gives to students so they can afford, irrelevant of their social backgrounds, to go on a mobility, to find housing that becomes or is affordable to them. And that's very important for everyone to consider.